Hello, and welcome to another episode of Old Busted Hotness. Here it is, the next project, my 1970 Triumph GT6. These cars were made from 1966 to 1973. There were three different versions of the car: the Mach 1 from 66 to 68, the Mach 2 from 68 to 70, and the Mach 3 from 70 to 73, with the only real distinguishable difference between them the front end and the rear end. The front end having the bumper in three different locations: right along the bottom, right in the middle, and then right along the top. This is a 1970, so it is the Mach 2, or the second gen, which is also known as the GT6 Plus. There are only 12,000 of these produced. In the Mach 2 form, had an inline 6, producing a whopping 104 horsepower. Top speed of 110 miles an hour. Yeah, right. 0 to 60 in 10 seconds. Now this is a rotary RX-7 S5 13B, producing 210 horsepower at 8,000 RPM. This belonged to a 1992 RX-7. The drivetrain, the front end, the rear end, it's all here, stuffed into this little car. The Triumph suspension, to anybody that knows Triumphs, was a complete joke. The motor does run, but right now, barely. But let's give it a listen anyway. Nothing I hate more than a 2.5-inch pipe with no muffler on a rotary motor. So that's what we're going to do today. Let's finish off the muffler, or at least get it close. So, first off, let's pull what we have off. I don't even have a downpipe gasket, so the first step is to make a downpipe gasket. Let's get to it. So I've been working on this car on and off for about 5 years now, since I bought it. Different things interrupting its transformation, moving the Datsun, other cars, life in general. So it's kind of good to get back to it. So I don't really remember how I expected to get this exhaust downpipe out of the car. I don't think I've ever tried to pull it off with the body on, but we're gonna fight it for a little while. So, as we watch me struggle trying to get this muffler out, we'll take a look under the car here, and you can see that this is a chassis on body, not a unibody. So I could pull the body off, and the chassis would still be in there, more like a truck. The drivetrain stays with the chassis, therefore the term rolling chassis. But you can see that I've replaced the pans and cleaned up a lot of the rust. This frame is actually bent a little bit, and that's what made the determination not to completely restore it and go with whatever I wanted to in it. But by the time I cut all the front end off to put the RX-7 front end on, most of that frame ended up actually being cut off. Or most of the bent frame actually ended up being cut off. So I used the lower A arms from the Triumph with an adapter to the RX-7 hubs, and then the McPherson struts in the front end. It's the RX-7's rack and pinion steering are all on the front end. Should handle pretty good, I hope, if I got all the geometry right. Anyway, I give up. Let's just make a imprint of this thing while it's still in the car. So did you ever go to a graveyard when you were in grade school and do the rubbings on the gravestones so you can read them and figure out what they say? Well, that's basically what I'm doing here. Just creating a pattern by using a pencil, lightly rubbing it across to find all the edges. then we're off to the races. First I do the outside diameter, then I did the little holes for the bolts, and then I cut out the middle. At this point the gasket is weak, so it's really hard to keep it in place, and that's why you work your way from the outside in. Once I get the middle cut out, we'll give it a fit. So in future videos, I will go through what I had to do on the front end and the rear end to get all that RX-7 suspension in there. So if you're interested, just stay tuned and we'll go through it as I touch those areas. Ta-da! So because this is a single turbo, it's a 2-rotor motor, and I have in the past made headers that go right from the rotor into a single pipe, but the turbo unit and the exhaust manifold do that for me. So next up, I had to create, because of the angles and stuff, I had to put a little bit of a bend in it before I could coast straight out the back of the car. So here I am thinking about it. So after looking at it, I decided that that was too much of a curve and I needed a little bit straighter. And then I thought, let's just go in the middle. The best of both worlds. Which actually turned out to be just the right amount of curve, even though you can't really see it in this video. Just a little curve. There you can see the pipe, but that doesn't go on there. Finish tacking this up. Now here's what I did with this may look familiar, I did this with the air cleaner on the Datsun. And this may look like I'm making a collector, but actually I'm making a splitter. A 2.5-inch pipe going underneath the Triumph would stick down just a little bit too far. So I'm going to go and create this splitter and split it into 2 1.5-inch pipes. That way it's only sticking down 1.5 inches from the bottom of the car, because there are spots on the Triumph where the muffler is underneath the car completely. And that is due to the fact that I had to stuff the Mazda rear end in that thing. So there it is, squished down to 1.5 inches. And there's my 2 pipes. There it is. So anytime you change the diameter of your exhaust pipe, or it goes through a collector or a splitter or a muffler or anything, if the pipe changes enough significantly, the exhaust is allowed to change its pitch, and that's kind of what creates droning in the cab. So I'm cutting away the outer side of these pipes to try and send the center of these pipes up the splitter a little bit so that it doesn't quite have that effect as much from that pipe changing its shape and creating a area of low pressure or whatever you want to call it. Could have gone a little further, but I figured that was pretty good. So I'll get this measured up, tacked on. So there was a couple things I wanted to accomplish with this build. One was to finally get another rotary in the family, and the other was to get 195 50 R15 tires. Never owned a set of that side rubber tire. They were always way too expensive. Now they're cheap. So I did both. I got a rotary and 15-inch wheels with 50 series tires.
If you're watching, you can just use this clip and insert it after any one of your puns.
And then I slowly mold it around to create a good seal. So in a minute here, you're going to see exactly how easy it is to get the downpipe out of my car. Ta-da! Couple of bolts, bolt it back in, and we'll climb underneath to see what the next step is. Now, I did have video of me welding the V-band on, which will go right here. but I don't know what happened to it. So through the magic of editing, we'll just skip right ahead. So here I am tightening up the V-band, making sure everything's straight and flat, and you can see now that the muffler is a lot thinner as it exits the car. And I guess the next question is, how am I going to mount these little shorties? There's Jaguar type, straight out the back, dually. There's the 45-degree angle type, just like the 370Z. And there's muscle car, and then there's the old Volkswagen mustache look. But I think the Jaguar look's gonna win this time. So we'll go with that. So after lots of measuring and looking and watching, I needed to put a couple of little bends up, which I do by cutting the pipe almost completely through and then pushing the gap together and re-welding it up. A couple little spots just gave me the little bit angle I needed up. Seal up all the cracks with welds, and let's see how she fits. And then we'll stick the shorties on the end. Again, I had to cut the pipes to give them a little spread because the shorties are obviously wider than the pipes. We'll weld this up as soon as I get them nice and straight. Throw it back under the car. Get my mounts in place. Two more holes won't matter in this old body. Amazingly, these mufflers came with those little bolts and everything. It's kind of nice. Weren't too bad. Now we'll finish tacking everything up. And we'll give it a sound test. So just to point out that that's the RX-7 gas tank hanging there. Not exactly safe, kind of Pinto-ish, but the original Triumph gas tank was mounted inside the cab. And so instead of breathing fumes from the gas tank every time I'd be driving, I decided to put it outside the cab. So I wasn't gonna show this video, but I'd just like to show you how much rust this car still has. Is that a hole? The whole underside of the car was gone. It's in pretty bad shape. Eventually, we'll get to it. So first up, let's hear another test engine without the muffler, just that 2.5-inch straight down pipe. And then we'll hear the finished product. Well, you can almost hear the turbo whine, can't you? Too bad the turbo isn't really working. Anyway, there she is. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode, where we'll rebuild or build or manufacture or design the alternator bracket to relocate it, because it won't fit on top of the engine where they normally are. Thanks for watching. Bye.